Well, welcome everyone to this edition of Human Wisdom Live. And today, Mala Hemnani, who's a human wisdom coach, and I, and all of us on this call, we're going to talk about something that really affects all human beings, which is we get emotionally hurt. And we're going to explore 4 questions. Why is it important to ask this question? Why we get hurt in the first place? How do we respond when we do get hurt? And how can we respond instead with wisdom? And we're going to try and keep this for about 30 minutes. So Mala, maybe the first question, why do you think it's important to ask, explore this question of why we get hurt?
So in order to explore this question, why do we get hurt? I think there are several reasons. I think the one that stands out most to me is the expectations that we have. So there are expectations, there are assumptions that we make, and there are emotional needs. We tend to want people to love us the way we love them. So if this is the way I love you, this is how you're going to show me by loving me in this same way. So we have certain expectations. Expectations are you want people to be like you, and the very things that may have attracted you right in the beginning of your relationship, it might have been like, how they say opposites attract, are the very things that start to annoy you. So you have to ask yourself, where is that actually coming from? So expectations, assumptions, emotional needs. And I think it's also sometimes boredom. We are in such a busy world, and we're so busy with life happening. And it's the attention that, we're unable to give attention to one thing. And in the same way, this is translated, it's become a habit. So it's translated into our relationships. We cannot give that quality time to our relationships because we are bored. And we want to move on and find something else. And if we can't find something else, we want to find something else in that is maybe sort of triggering something. And that could be a negative emotion. So I think these are some of the things, Manoj, that come to mind.
But, just to go back one step, which is this feeling of being hurt is part of being human, right? It's automatic. We have no control over it. And when it happens, we just assume, or our mind assumes, it's the other person who's hurting us. And as a result of that, my goodness, so many relationships break up, right? Or even if they continue with this frosty silence, or, where love has gone, the fragrance of affection is no longer there. And people just continue, and that hurt just continues to fester in our memory. So every time I meet a person, there's that hurt coming up again. I remember in our own family, people, for something quite trivial, got hurt and then didn't speak, for maybe 10 years to each other. So this is a very human emotion. And if we can find a way of understanding what's going on, and you mentioned a few things. Where do you think our expectations come from? Why do we have expectations?
I think we need to ask, in order to answer that, we need to ask ourselves, where is this need actually coming from? And the question to ask is, what in me is actually getting hurt?
Yeah.
Because we don't define the hurt, we get hurt. And then we react to it. But can we go a step back and say, let's pause and think, what is it that's actually getting me hurt? What emotion is it? What's the need for me to have that need? Is it triggered by some past experience, memory, conditioning, which has now become a habit? And as you live your habits, they get more and more reinforced. And because they get more and more reinforced, you believe it to be reality.
Yes.
And that reality in turn defines you. So it's sort of a vicious circle. So you look at triggers, you ask yourself, what is it in me that's actually getting hurt? And what's the need in me to be attached? Why do I need to be attached to that need? Why
That point of view, yes.
Yes, that point of view.
Yes.
So what in me is creating my point of view? And then to take it a step further, the sensible thing would be to say, if I have a point of view, could it possibly be that the other person also has a particular point of view?
Yes.
And a set of expectations and assumptions.
But the way our mind works is that we become so certain of our own point of view as being correct. Just it's the human mind's like that. So I've been conditioned in a particular way. Say, for example, I expect women to do the cooking, for example. I may have grown up in that way. And so I'm just absolutely sure that that's the only way to see the world. And if someone's behaving differently to how I would like them to be, then I get hurt. And I blame them for hurting me. But I don't see that the origin of the hurt is from me. It's from my own unmet expectation, right?
Yes, so talking about point of view, again, we want to believe what we believe, and we need to keep living that belief. Otherwise, we tell ourselves that, it's a sense of security, protection. We don't want to move away from that belief because that belief, it defines us. Now, if that belief is actually defining us and we want to live that belief, the thing to ask again, is that belief really serving me and serving the relationship? What expectation do I need to let go of in order to make this relationship work? So what's your intent really? You want to hold on to that belief at the cost of the relationship? Is that we have a need to validate that belief because it's about our identity. So it comes back to, in my view, being attached to our self-image, our identity, how we define ourselves.
Yes. And what we have to also make it clear is this is an automatic unconscious process. So if I don't wake up to it, all my past influences become the me, which I become attached to automatically. So unless I wake up to that process, it's going to continue operating in the background unconsciously, automatically. So that's probably where my expectations come from about how I want you to behave. But the other aspect which gets us hurt, or the other reason, is our unmet emotional needs. So for example, I may have a need to be listened to, but not the same need to listen, or a need to be loved, or physical affection, or to be understood, or to be important. I want you to make me feel important. I'm not even aware I have these needs. So when those needs are not met in a relationship, then I start feeling upset. And the way my mind works is I blame you for upsetting me. I'm not even aware of this process in the background, am I?
So why are you in that relationship? What is it that created that relationship? Is that relationship a transaction where you're counting the give and take? I did everything for you, but what have you actually done for me? So what's the intention? I believe a lot of, we were talking about this just earlier. I think the quality of your life depends on the quality of your relationship. No one at the end of their life, when they're sort of nearing the end and they're looking back, and especially people who are very, very ill and they know they don't have that much longer to live. When we talk to those people, no one ever says, I wish I had made another million, or I wish I had actually opened another business. Most of them say that I wish I'd just gone to someone and said, I love you. I wish I had made amends with this relationship. I wish I had given someone a hug. I wish I had spent more time with my family, which tells us very clearly that the quality of your life is the quality of relationship.
Yes. So
But then let's ask ourselves, what is it in that relationship that you're looking for? So is it a transaction? Is it a give and take? When I'm saying, I did this for you, I need this, and I need you to fulfill this. So what are you actually looking for in that relationship?
I think we have to realize, perhaps, Mala, that this is how the mind is wired. The human mind is wired in a transactional way. So if you don't wake up to what's going on, this is how the mind is going to function. It's going to measure, what have you done for me? What have I done for you? And as you rightly say, first thing we have to do is wake up to that process, zoom out and realize, why am I in this relationship? And so on. So besides our unmet emotional needs and our expectations, the other reason why we get hurt is when we get criticized. And that criticism can be so searing, can't it? The pain of it. If someone says something, or even they may not even realize they're hurting you. That's the other thing to bring into the conversation. People may not hurt you consciously, but their remarks, though unintended, can be really painful. Can you think of an example?
So when I've worked with certain clients, and especially in their workplace, and they talk about how, a coworker, a boss, a manager criticize them. And when we work through this, and through our coaching conversations, we get to know, actually, it's all about you. So it's either something that you've experienced somewhere in your life. Maybe you had a parent where you were constantly criticized, maybe you had a sibling who didn't sort of, you didn't match up to what they were doing. So it's really, at the end of the day, it's really all about you. And you've got to ask yourself, what in this? So there are people who take criticism and take it very constructively, and they move forward. So let's turn it around, and let's say, like, I've been in a situation, and this is a personal experience that I'm sharing now. So I had this thing where there was this one person in my life, a very close relationship, that I always criticized. And I don't know why. It's not like I was critical of the others, but I was critical about this one person. And I had to go through my journey because I wanted that relationship, to understand what it is that is causing this, for me to criticize the other person. And it was only an open conversation. So beneath the criticizing, there is something else that's happened. And it's asking yourself, what is that? And then it's really, in this particular case, it was open communication, because we assume sometimes that we know how the other person is going to feel. And we also assume that they know we're hurt.
Yes.
Assume they know we're hurt.
Yes.
Why for sure do we assume that? We're hurt. We haven't possibly not expressed it enough, or expressed it in a certain way where the other person would understand it. And it was only when we have that open conversation that it's actually, and in this case, you know what it was, Manoj? It was just the tone. And that's what needed to be shifted. Something as little as that. It was just the tone. But then I had to ask myself, what is it in me that brings out this particular tone, where I say the exact same sentence to this person, and I say the exact same sentence to somebody else, but it's not the choice of words, it's the tone.
It's the tone. So you brought up two interesting points. One is that when we're close to people, there's something in us that automatically makes us critical of them. And the closer we are, the more critical we are. For example, to think of children, you're always telling them to do something and be different. But that translates even to our intimate relationships, because we want others to be like us, because that's our comfort zone, our ideas and our thinking. And of course, that process can make the other person hurt or make us feel hurt. But you're also right in saying that when we get hurt, let's explore this question now, which is, how do we respond? And we respond by withdrawing, don't we? We respond to hurt by withdrawing, and sometimes the other person doesn't even know that we're hurt. So all that happens is we stop talking to them, or they think we're becoming cool. They don't understand why, but we expect them to know why. And of course, that's such an unreasonable expectation. And that can go on for days, weeks, or even years sometimes, or relationships just break up and people have never communicated that. So it's so hard to communicate. I've been hurt. Not you've hurt me, but I've been hurt. And of course, we also respond to getting hurt by retaliating, by withdrawing our affection, or by being critical of something else that people have done in the past. Can you think of any other ways in which, can you think of an example of how we respond when we get hurt?
I think I think we respond in many ways where it actually translates into, so we take that and it translates into the rest of our life. And I think Gopalan here was saying this when we started the call, that it's not just the relationship you have with your partners or your work, people you work with, it's the relationship you have with yourself. And I think what happens when you start withdrawing with a particular person, you start withdrawing from life. You start withdrawing from your dreams and your visions and your aspirations. And you start losing yourself in that. So I believe that, there is withdrawing, there's reactions, there's all kinds of reactions. And I think underlying this is, one thing that comes up is, I think it's a cause, but it's also an effect, is a self-interest. And I think I read this somewhere in the app that, I loved what it said. I think it said, self-interest hijack your intentions.
Yes.
So your intentions for that relationship, your intentions for living your dream, your intentions for being your best self. And that self-interest is one of the things that disappears and also result of a relationship that is not going so well.
Yes. Okay. But the patterns of our responses also tend to repeat themselves, don't they, Mala? So when we've been hurt, that in any relationship, sorry, Samira, can you mute yourself? I think I'm sorry. Not at all. So the patterns of our relationships tend to, or the way we get hurt and we respond in any couple tend to repeat themselves, don't they? And gradually the affection disappears. So if the hurt is not resolved, it gets stored in my memory. Then I meet you again. It could be a friend, could be an intimate relationship, could be a brother, sister, or even a child, a teenager and so on. The other day we had a gardener in the garden, an old man, 70. And he said he hadn't spoken to his son for 30 years because of some argument they had 30 years ago. And the heartache, he'd not seen his grandchildren and so on. So we really need to find a way of resolving our hurts and traumas in a really constructive way using wisdom. So what can we do? That's perhaps the most important part of this conversation, which is we've understood now why it's important to explore the question, why we get hurt, how do we respond? How can we respond instead with wisdom?
I think firstly, we need to take responsibility for the relationship. We like to throw it like, okay, it's not working. That person did this, that person did that, this one, that thing, whatever happened. I think we need to take responsibility. It's almost like a project we have. And what's the intention behind that? Taking that responsibility is to better this relationship. Yesterday, I had a couple that I was talking to. And it's sad to see sometimes because they're what could have been beautiful relationships between siblings, between partners. And the thing is, the sad thing is that there's actually still love. There is still love. They actually love each other. But because of all the reasons we've talked about, the self-interest, the expectations, there's, you know, they decide to sort of not speak, like the example you've given. So, but there is an innate desire that you want that relationship. So what can we do? I think the first thing we need to do is, one, take responsibility. I think we've got to let me be me, let them be them.
That's so hard, right? Acceptance, in the end, acceptance of difference is one of the key things to successful relationships of any kind, whether you have a different opinion or belief or dietary preference or whatever it might be. But I think you mentioned something earlier, which is, what's your intention? Do you want to win? Or do you want to really make this relationship work? Do you value? I don't think sometimes people value their relationships until it's too late. So then people end up feeling lonely in life and then wonder, how did I get here? You know, I'm 60 or 70 or whatever I am, or 50, and I've got no friends or no intimate relationships. And one of the reasons is because when we got hurt, we withdrew. We didn't know how else to respond. So that's why this question is so important. Firstly, value the relationship. That can help you then take the next steps much more constructively. But when we last spoke, you also mentioned something important, which is, rather than just think about what's happening to you, to also pause and ask, what's happening to the other person? What's going on in their thinking to make them think or behave in the way that they are?
So, Manoj, I'd like to say something on acceptance. Acceptance is not, to me, acceptance is not weakness. It's actually, so no one's asking you to agree. No one's asking you to change your point of view. No one's asking you to give up your dreams. I think the beauty of acceptance is there's a creative intelligence. We are creative people. We're social animals. And again, this is another conversation that I remember, and all this is coming back to me now. When so there's this couple, and they're very different. I mean, they're different in so many ways. You know, it's uncanny how different they are. And I asked the wife, and I said, you know, how do you? I mean, he goes to bed like so he gets up at 4 a.m. She's a late riser. You know, there are all these kinds of differences. Yet they're so together. And she said, why would I want a clone of myself? Why would I want someone to be exactly like this? Because that's what makes life so boring. You know, we're looking on the outside for, you know, stimulation and activity and distraction. And she says, here is my distraction. You know, he's so different that it actually keeps me on my toes. And I find it so inspiring. And that's what creativity is, isn't it? It's about being curious, about coming out from where you are, from your little box of your little world, and saying, fine, let me give that other person a chance. No one's asking you to change your point of view. And that's the beauty about acceptance. Like, yes. Can you bring that into your world? Yeah. And there was this one girl, she said something beautiful to me. So she's looking for a partner in her life. And she's got very high standards. And she's got very high expectations of life, of herself. And, you know, I said, who's going to match up to you? You know, you're going to drive the guy crazy. And she said, I don't need him to be that. She said, in fact, I will see what he has in him. And who knows, maybe I will be such a great influence on him that he will blossom out into be his better self through me, if you know what I mean. So we all have some sort of influence on each other, but we don't have to impose it. Yes. And direct it and dominate it. If we can allow the relationship to just blossom by itself, that's beautiful.
You mentioned a really interesting word, which is one of my favorites, which is curiosity. So when you're hurt, to be curious, why am I hurt? What's going on in me to make me feel hurt, as you said? And then that opens a door to learning about yourself. And once you open that door to learn about yourself, then you start growing in wisdom, which is what the whole Human Wisdom Project is all about. But also curiosity about the other person. Why is the other person behaving in the way that they are? And that helps you to understand their conditioning and so on. And I think if instead of reacting in the usual way, which is by withdrawing, not communicating our hurt, and so on, or retaliating, if we did the opposite, which is not easy, by the way, but we shared the fact that, yes, I was hurt by that, not your fault, but, is something triggered in me. I need to find out what that is. Not withdraw your affection, keep the communication channels open, and ask yourself, am I really interested? What's my intention? Is it to win this argument or to really nurture and preserve this relationship? Because instead of it being something that drives people apart, it can actually bring you even closer together if you both explore this together. What happened? What did I say? You said. How did I react? You reacted. And that conversation then takes you deeper. So I'm just going to take 5 minutes now and talk through the Human Wisdom Project and the app that we've developed, which explores this in much more detail. And then we can circle back and get some comments from everyone who's here and any questions. So just give me 2 minutes to share the screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So this is the Human Wisdom app. It's just humanwisdom.me. And it scrolls up and down and right to left like a Netflix or Amazon style dashboard. There are lots of features up here. There's some stories, an online journal for you to record your thoughts, a discussion forum, many podcasts. And these are very short videos called Wisdom Shorts. This is just an introduction to wisdom and what wisdom is, which is basically comes from self-understanding, not according to me or you, but according to yourself as you learn about yourself. In this Get Support Now section, actually, there is a 10-minute video on conflict in relationships, because when you're in the middle of conflict, your mind can't think straight. Every logic that you might have before goes out of the window. So it's a really good reminder if you come in here and you just have 10 minutes to understand what are the different ways you can respond how we can manage wisdom. Then below that's the full program. So it begins with how to have a calm mind, because a calm mind is less reactive. And that gives you that little bit of space to not react with anger or criticism of the other person. And just to pause and ask, hey, what's going on in the other person, or what's going on in me to make me feel hurt? Below that's the art of inquiry, which is how to learn to understand yourself or look at yourself. It's got 9 modules. Then it's understanding how the mind works, and that's the core of the program. So we've talked a little bit about conditioning, which is all my thoughts and opinions and beliefs are unconsciously come to me from my past. The reactive mind is also a great module to explore, because that's why we get hurt. My mind instantly reacts to what you've said or what's happened without pausing to ask, hey, what's going on? So there are 9 modules to explore there, including our emotional needs. When our emotional needs are not met, that's when we get hurt and we can react. Then we explore all our emotions. Anger is one. Anxiety is another that's common. And then we've got this 16 modules on how to live with wisdom, but one of them is relationships. And it's our biggest module. It's got 400 screens. And there's a big section on how do you respond with intelligence when you get hurt. Just quickly go through it. So these are mini podcasts. That's tells you what the transcript of what the podcast is saying. There's small short videos you can watch. And of course, we always assume it's the other person who's responsible for our hurt, and that's not always true. So this is a really useful question. Does my hurt arise from my reaction to what you said or to the event itself? And often it's my reaction. So if I can pause and ask, why have I reacted in that way? I could learn something new about myself and grow as a human being. The small journaling screens that you can write your answers to. We haven't touched on this one, that when someone's having a reaction, it's once you spot that, then it's often useful just to cool the situation down, because they have no control over their reaction. And if you react to their reaction, it's just going to go on a downward spiral. So you could just say, hey, we're having a reaction here. Why don't we just pause and pick this up, when we've all calmed down a little bit. And we never ask ourselves this question, which is, could our feeling of being hurt come from within us? It's not being caused by the other person. Our mind just never instinctively thinks of it in this way. So for example, my expectations come from me. So I am responsible for my expectations, not somebody else. How would we feel if everyone else held us responsible for meeting their expectations? We wouldn't like that. Or when our emotional needs are not being met, which we talked about. Or when we react to what people say and get hurt, we may not have understood them correctly. Or of course, when we're criticized. Now, I'm going to leave you people to explore this at their leisure. But just to give you a flavor of what the Human Wisdom app is all about. Okay, so we've got a few minutes for questions or comments. And we've got a small gathering, so why don't we take that opportunity to see what others have to say. Gopalan, what do you think? What would you like to share based on what we've discussed?
Very thankful that Mala shared her insights. They were really wonderful insights. Thank you. Thank you very much. Those insights were very, it had a wide spectrum. You managed to convey so much within such a short time. That was quite impressive for me. And what for me, the takeaway was that the big thing about the takeaway was about acceptance, acknowledgement, acceptance, and non-reaction. The non-reaction does not equal to withdrawing, and that differences of opinion actually enriches when you learn to accept someone for who or she is than who you want them to be. To actually thrive in the diversity that this relationship is enriching, because it's different from who I am. And what am I learning from this relationship about myself instead of,
That's such a beautiful question, Pala, which is, what am I learning about myself from my feeling of being hurt? Rather than, what am I blaming somebody else for? That sort of thing. Johnny, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I just was consumed by the conversation that both you and Mala were having And I was amazed by the authentic and spontaneous curiosity with which you were having this conversation with each other. And that was so wonderful. Thank you both, Manoj and Mala, for that. And what specifically got me in touch with is the fact that, it's about my own belief, whether I believe or not, right? And then the moment I become aware of my own beliefs as to, do I really have some beliefs when it comes to relationships and expectations? And that moment, it kind of diffuses itself, saying, why? What are those beliefs? And therefore, who am I showing up in this relationship? And therefore, who am I to either feel rejoiced or hurt in a relationship?
Okay, thank you, Johnny, for that. Tina Marie is joining us from Atlanta in Georgia. Would you like to share something, Tina Marie? I know it's really early for you, 6 a.m. Maybe she hasn't heard us. Alistair, would you like to share anything or ask a question or have a comment?
I think what came up for me, Manoj, it's this question of, there seems to be in each one of us a very strong structure that gets built up. And I'm just wondering, when we come to a relationship, are we coming to that relationship to emphasize that structure even more, have its needs met, as Mala was saying, or I've come to the relationship to actually learn about this structure which I've built, yes, or which thought has built?
Yes, yes.
And is there enough space and curiosity, as that's a wonderful word, is there enough space and curiosity in me for this structure to begin to unfold, yes, in my relationship with you and each one of you?
Yes, yes.
And I think if there is that space and that genuine curiosity, then the wisdom that you're speaking about, Manoj, can start to flower.
Yes.
if I can put it like that.
No, it's.
I think that's what came up for me, and to what you've said so far, and I think it's beautiful what you've brought up so far. Thank you.
No, I think you've put it so beautifully, that relationship, including being hurt, which we regard as something bad, horrible, other person's fault, all of those negative things. Yes. If we changed our perspective and realized, here's an amazing opportunity to learn about myself, about the structure, yes, of me, as you said.
Yeah.
And if I take that opportunity and have that dialogue with whoever I'm with, then I grow as a human being.
Yeah, yeah.
See, then my relationships become richer,
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I thought that the hurt might turn out to be the most beautiful thing, not this idea that it's ugly or bad or that I need to push it away, but actually to begin to allow it to fully come out into the open, what this hurt is.
Yes.
Why all this energy got stuck. I think that for me is very challenging.
Yes, yes. It's, by the way, none of this is easy. But if we want to grow as human beings, we want to have rich relationships with depth, then we need to be curious about ourselves, each other. And the more we're curious, the more we'll realize, actually, you and I are the same human being deep down.
I would love to add to what Alistair said. I love what Alistair said, and it's put a thought in my head that, you know, we talk about how we want to become the best version of ourselves. And actually, this is about just expanding ourselves to become more of who we are. So we go into a relationship with who we are, what we believe we are, what our beliefs, our values, are, whatever. And then we take so much from that relationship, whether it is taking it directly, whether it's learning through acceptance, adjustments, understanding, conversations, to expand ourselves to become so much more, so that the structure, you went in with this, but you became this, and you get that much more.
Yes, yes.
And I love that, yeah.
But it needs courage, right?
Absolutely.
This journey needs courage. It needs a heart that's open and willing to learn about itself and allow itself to be vulnerable. To, you know, a lot of people are scared, and there's no need to be, because on the other side of hurt and fear and all of that lies great beauty. You know, the great beauty of being and of having relationships with depth and with love and goodness and affection and all of that. Okay, any other comments from anyone else on the call today before we close? Gopalan, yes.
That's a very interesting note. You talk about we go in with our own structure. I found that very fascinating. I never really looked at it that way, but I realized now that we actually do have a structure, because that started from our childhood, isn't it? And all that conditioning and familiarity with the culture and the opinions that we draw as we grow up through our growing years, is we actually form a very solid structure. Yes. So when we go into a relationship, you're actually going into a relationship with somebody who also has a structure. So what is coming to me is that when that has to happen, where two people with two different structures come in, what is the biggest thing that need to happen when two solid structures meet? We need flexibility.
Yes, yes. You know, Alistair, what you've said has also triggered something else, which is actually the structure is the same in all human beings, but the content we put in the structure might be unique to us, right? So we're all conditioned, but in different ways. We're not aware that we're conditioned. Or we're all reactive, but we're not aware. Or our mind compares all the time, but it might be about different things. So this curiosity about myself, about the structure, also awakens compassion. Because I see deep down, you and I are the same human being. We have the same structure. The content of our memory might be different, but the way the mind is working and all of that is the same. The way all of us respond to being hurt is the same, right?
Yes.
Every human being responds in the same way, and so on. So there's such a rich door of learning that opens up if you ask the right questions.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, well, thank you, everyone. We'll try and keep this short. We'll share this with others who couldn't come, but